long. Your position is not sustainable. Likewise, the country is the same. Someone has to finance it, but you can maintain that position as an individual as long as someone, a bank, a grandfather, someone is giving you that financing. Yet we know on the line it's not sustainable, same with the fiscal position. And so what that means is that this chart here points to reserve position. Because the fiscal position isn't sustainable and we try to maintain an unsustainable position, and we're not growing, we're not earning, the money we're being spent and the financing that goes to maintain that fiscal position eventually erodes your reserves. Because you're not earning, but you're spending, right? Make sense? You're not earning, you're spending, so it's coming back around and erode your reserves. So whether the financing is coming from the commercial bank or the central bank, and in the latter case of this, most of it came from the central bank, as the commercial banks avoid taking any more debt. But the analysis suggests, in terms of technical analysis, that for every dollar that you lend to government, 75 cents go back in terms of reserves impact. Why is that so? Almost everything we consume, we import. Almost if I ask for a survey in this room, almost everything that you have in this room was imported. So when you lend government a dollar, or they borrow from the central bank or the financial system, and they pay wages and salaries, and might even buy some stationery, they're all imported. And how do you do imports? You exchange that dollar at the central bank for 50 cents. So the reserves fall, right? That's the connection. But you're not earning. And then investors are watching and saying, well, this is not sustainable, so they're not bringing any more money. So it becomes almost a self-fulfilling cycle, a virtuous cycle. You could see from 2009, we had reserves in terms of US close to 850 or 1.6 billion. Or we like to standardize in terms of how much weeks of imports you can cover, almost 25 weeks. And that gradually declined sharply over time to where we had at the end of 2017, 420 million, or just about 5 weeks of imports. I like to say 2 toilet papers and a tin of sardine and we broke. In other words, this is not a sufficient cover in terms of reserve adequacy to go anywhere. So you see the picture. So if I had to ask anyone, you don't have to be no star in economics, how do you fix this? Well, people will say, well, we got to get growth. You'll be absolutely correct, right? You got to fix the fiscal position because that's unsustainable. True? And you got to build back your reserves. Agree? And then the other element we mentioned here was the debt. People are looking at debt and say, well, this debt is unsustainable. Any individual that have a debt to his income ratio of 175% has serious issues. So you see the 4 pieces we have. So that's how we built the government of Barbados and the economic team built the Barbados Recovery and Transformation Program. The first anchor is to recover. That means immediately tasks, immediate measures to do so. And the latter part is to transform the economy. It's like a patient go to the doctor. You first must recover. You take some pills. You don't walk out feeling healthy and bumpy immediately. And then, depending on the problem, the doctor might tell you, change your lifestyle, go on a treadmill, run, get fit. And this is what we're trying to do. So let me take you into some elements of the program. What's the overall strategy of the program? To generate sustainable and inclusive growth. Growth that not only ourselves, but our generation, our kids and their kids and our great-grandchildren to come can enjoy. We need to restore the kind of growth we saw in the pre-2007, pre-global financial crisis period. And that means that we have to restore debt and fiscal sustainability. We have to bring the debt down to a manageable level, and we have to restore our fiscal position. As the Prime Minister will say all the time, we have to become fiscally fit for the 21st century on our public finances. And how do we do that? What are the key elements? We're going to focus on an ambitious fiscal consolidation strategy. Ambitious because, as I will show in the next slide, I mentioned the primary balance is what we anchor on. I will show that what we're trying to improve in terms of primary balance is a considerable effort. It's ambitious because it requires every Barbadian, it requires significant commitment. But it's doable because we see that the Prime Minister, the leader of the country, is totally committed to attaining these adjustment and transforming Barbados. It requires a comprehensive debt restructuring. Community analysis is very clear that you got to deal with that, and that's why the government announced a comprehensive debt restructuring and is now engaging with the creditors to achieve that. And it's no different if you have a debt with a commercial bank and somehow it get almost sustainable. They call you and have a conversation. Same thing. We got to get growth reforms, remove the impediments to doing business, make sure that we can get projects back, get confidence going. Any impediment to generating growth needed, we got to deal with that. And it's quite easy to see some of them because the international community is constantly evaluating and analyzing countries. And if you go on the OECD website in trade facilitation, they'll point out some of what is deemed as impediments to growth in terms of Barbados. And we will deal with those. We got to obviously build back those reserves to comfortable levels. And we know we live in an era becoming increasingly prone to natural disasters. We are probably one of the most prone, stricken areas in terms of natural disasters. Only the other day we had an earthquake. And that's the second that I know that I can remember of. And it's recent. We didn't have these things back then. And we got to try to regain our access to capital markets. What I didn't mention in the previous analysis when I diagnosed any problem is that we've lost complete access to international market. No one's going to lend Barbados at where it is. Our credit worthiness has declined with a stream of downgradings. And this is what investors watch when they plan to invest. We got to rebase that. And then we got to transfer the economy into economy for the 21st century. Not by investing in knowledge-based, creative, high-value service and industries. That said, we are visual, so I try to encapsulate it in the adjustment effort in a graph. Now, we know a budget was announced, the mini budget, we affectionately refer to it, which incorporated a number of tax measures aimed at trying to halt and stabilize the economy, broaden the tax effort, widen the net in terms of allowing our international visitors to participate. That effort alone was put us, and what I mentioned here, by the way, when we try to think about what holds this together, is stable debt stability and fiscal stability. So we're looking to anchor our debt to GDP ratio at 60% by the medium term. We put a target at 2030 to 2033. That solid black line is the debt target. But you see, if we just go on the mini budget measures, we'll be way off. We cannot hit it on our own. So what the government has done then is say, well, look, what other fiscal efforts can I put in place, both on the expenditure side, to ensure that I hit that target of debt to GDP ratio of 60% by 2030-33, which will generate confidence in the international community and allow us to move ahead with our economic recovery program. And that is the right line. It brings us very close. But that is not enough. We can't get there unless everybody participates. And the other part missing will be the debt restructuring. So the third line incorporates the debt restructuring, assuming that we are able to restructure our debt and we get considerable savings. What do I mean by that, by the way? Why is that such a stranglehold? Because when you have a high debt to GDP ratio, you must service that debt. So in the fiscal accounts, you have to pay interest, particularly interest payments, and you got to pay a principal. It means that the more debt you have, the less fiscal space or money remaining to do very critical stuff. And then the result is that you will find that the infrastructure deteriorates, roads will deteriorate, building will deteriorate because you don't have the resources available to maintain it. Again, like an individual, when you get your paycheck, you have to go and give the bank, then you have nothing to do, no resource to do anything else. It's the same picture. So by restructuring our debt, we will get some space on the fiscal that we can do valuable capital infrastructure, building back our roads and building back buildings and creating an environment that will encourage growth, encourage private individuals to come and get the growth going. So you see how it hangs together. So that's what. So now, not to get too much into numbers, but I cannot get around with unless I tell you the elements of the adjustment on the fiscal side. Between now, and we're looking at an 18-year, between now and, this is a medium-term growth, but in terms of recovery, this is a medium-term growth path, but in terms of recovery, we want to be able to do a considerable amount within 18 months. Okay? Now, we're going to try to, on the revenue side, our increase in revenue intake because the widening tax base and spreading burden will give us about 1.3% over the 18 months adjustment on that. That will help. That's income. On the expenditure side, we're looking to cut 7.1% of GDP. Remember again, I told you I'm measuring in terms of GDP. So you can see we're doing more on the expenditure side than on the revenue side. And how are we doing that on the expenditure side? Well, we're hoping out of that 7.1%, 5 percentage points will come from debt restructuring because the debt is quite high. And then another 2.1 percentage point will come from non-debt restructuring efforts on expenditure, which basically will be either between wages and the size and structure of government. Now, how we will get that 2.1 is by analyzing in very detail the structure of the public sector to see how we can make it more efficient and make it more fit for purpose. Because the way it's structured now, we're a considerable, and if I didn't show that, but if you look at the amount of transfers that go to the state-owned enterprises, that has grown almost double over the last 10 to 15 years, where a considerable amount of resources are transferred to the public enterprises for wage and salaries and to service debts in particular. But you have now to look and see, well, how can I restructure this? Not necessarily looking to cut numbers, but looking to make it more efficient and more fit for purpose and where we're going. So we expect to get 2.1 percentage point from that effort in Clyde. You will see we're boosting capital expenditure from 1.5% the government to 2.5%. Because that's necessary infrastructure, the capital expenditure is too low to build back the economy we need. So we need to start to build back that. But we're going to make it only in terms of what is needed, critical priority projects at the moment. I will make to mention one thing. In the last fiscal year, 2017-18, the overall outcome, the primary balance from all the fiscal operations was about 3.3% of GDP, the primary balance, right? But if we're really serious about what we're going to do, we know that 3.3 is not really the true cost of running the government, because arrears amounting. There's a considerable amount of arrears. We've heard the Prime Minister talk about that. Arrears now standing at the size of $1.9 billion. So the true cost, if you had actually paid all your bills, you would not have achieved a primary deficit of 3.3. So before the government could come up with an adjustment, how we adjust, they determine what was the true cost. We had a practice where institution SOEs will come and you put something in estimate, and then during the year you will go for a subvention. So put all of that together and say, well, let's put everything in the beginning. What will be the true cost? And indeed, the true cost for running government in 2018 will have been in 18-19, this fiscal year, we arrive at a primary balance of 2.3% of GDP. That coincides with the line that I told you in the previous chart. This line, the blue line, not enough to get you there. So what we are trying to do is, given this is a true cost, we're going to try between now and the end of the fiscal year 18-19 to improve our finances by 1% of GDP from 2.3 to 3.3, and I mentioned how that, and then by the next fiscal year to 6% of GDP. That is a 3.7% increase in the primary deficit. And in terms of adjustment across countries, is ambitious, is the upper end of adjustment. So it's a considerable effort and requires significant commitment. In terms of policies on the revenue side, because many of them were announced before, were announced in mini budget, including first of all, the removing the NSRL, which by all intents and purposes and by international standard, quite distortionary, and that removal that, but that's compensated by other taxes. New taxes include the airline and travel and tourism development fee. You have tax on widening the income bracket to the top above $75,000, you get extra. So you know these measures are already spelled out in the budgetary statement. So in interest of time, I won't go through them, but what is listed here, the gains from them. So on the revenue side, much of that has been implemented. Where the effort now comes from is on the expenditure side. And what is needed here is for us, and we are setting our internal targets. The internal target is to reduce transfers and subsidies over the period by about 115 million. But I must stress, it is not about a number. It's about making the SOEs and the public sector fit for purpose, making it fiscally fit, fiscal being the fiscal accounts. So if it was just about a number, well, we can just let a number and we can cut, but that's not it. When you go to efficiency, and it will show you later, you may lose some here, gain some here, because you need more here, and like key areas like aviation, etc. But you may lose some in another area. It's not so where you don't need for the 21st century. But hopefully, net position is an improvement and a savings. We're hoping to save 115 million. Probably this is a fiscal year saving about 41 million in the first 18-19, and another 70-75 million in the following year. I will go through how we get that. Now, the way we're approaching, and the government has chosen to approach the adjustment on the expenditure side through the SOEs, is what we will